Known miscreant Matthew Lloyd is here, and he says the Pope just announced that hell does not. I just read that as the Pope just announced that hell doth not exist. He wrote, does not exist. What does that mean for Catholicism and for Western culture more broadly? Did he actually say that? Did the Pope, I'm going to assume that's true, because this particular Pope is a communist Pope. I bet you John Paul II is doing 2,000 RPM in his grave. I mean, here's a man who basically helped defeat communism, grew up under communism, John Paul II, and now this guy's bringing in all the communism he can possibly get. Look, I have a hard time personally with the idea of hell, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so it turns out the Pope did not actually say that's his quick little coin, but let's just say that that he did, because it's an interesting subject, hell. I can't imagine. Let's take the surviving person, who is the biggest, and I mean this sincerely, the biggest victim of injustice that you can imagine. So let's take somebody whose entire family, mostly children of his or hers, died horribly in the Holocaust. And this doesn't take much imagination, because there's a number of those people actually lived, and most of them are gone now, obviously. In fact, all of the parents are gone. But let's say that you're a person who lost everything that you care about in the Holocaust, and you got your hands in the afterworld on Adolf Hitler, and you threw him in boiling oil. And this would be extremely satisfying and a fun thing to do, and you could sell tickets and make a fair amount of money, I would imagine. But the question I have to ask myself is, even the most harmed person in the world, I cannot imagine a person who could watch, yes, Adolf Hitler, in a boiling lake of fire for much more than 5 or 10 minutes. I suspect after that time they would simply say, okay, that's enough. And the reason they would say that's enough is because they're not Adolf Hitler. They would, if they said, if this man was in boiling oil forever, for days or years or eternity, essentially, and you have the power to let him out if you forgive him, I don't think there's a person with a soul alive that could take an awful lot of that until they would finally, even at the expense of their sanity, perhaps say, okay, that's enough. That's enough. And that's why Hitler is Hitler, because he never had that ability, and he's not alone. There's millions of people that don't have the ability to say that, no, that's enough. Don't, there's revenge, and then this is just, I can't bear to watch it, and I can't bear to be responsible for it. It's kind of like the people who walk away from Memorialize thing. Comes a point when it's like, okay, I'm not going to be party to this suffering, no matter how much has happened to me. So I bring up the Lake of Fire only to say that this is the kind of traditional view of hell, and kind of the Catholic vision of hell that may or may not be all the Catholics are going to leap in now, but basically, whether that is what the religion actually says hell is, that is what a large number of people throughout history have perceived it to be. Let's just put it that way. And I don't believe that kind of hell is possible, because if there is a God who created the hell, then if the average human being has enough mercy and decency in them to prevent this kind of endless torture, then I suspect that loving God would have that quality as well. Much better idea about hell is the idea that, as many people have pointed out, is that hell is is a disconnect from grace, that it's an afterlife that's not so much filled with boiling oil so much as it is this is an interesting thought. I don't really know where I'm going with this. What I was going to basically say is that it seems to me like that version of hell would be a world of unredeemed pride, where you basically, and I mean this sincerely, I suspect Harvey Weinstein's life prior to this meltdown, and certainly after it, was a species of hell, where, and most of the people in Hollywood, back of the orange wall there, live in a version of this world, where Merlin says hell is actually standing outside the gates of heaven looking in. I think that's well said, actually. I think that's quite well said. You have to... I have no pity for Harvey Weinstein at all. I could certainly watch him in the boiling oil for 20 seconds, I would think. He has none of my sympathy. I find him a loathsome individual. I find him one of the worst people in modern times, and representative of many thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in show business who are exactly as bad as he is. But his life must be really particularly an awful life, even when he was living at large. And this is why movie stars are so unhappy. This is why so many celebrities are so unhappy. Do you ever wonder why Jennifer Aniston can't seem to stay married? Don't you find that a little odd? How Jennifer Aniston is just constantly being dumped by everybody? I don't find Jennifer Aniston to be a particularly unattractive person. You would think that Jennifer Aniston would be perfectly capable of landing quite a good man and keeping him. But she can't, and she doesn't. And she doesn't because she can't. And she can't because Jennifer Aniston's world is the world of Hollywood. And this is the greatest curse that can befall a person, I think, especially a person like the kind of people that go into show business, people like me. The people that seek fame and celebrity, some small percentage of them can recover from this. I feel like I'm making progress myself in this regard. But basically, the people that are in it for the fame instead of for the art are in it to fill a hole in them that wasn't filled by parents, that there was some enormous emotional hole in their childhood that left them with a sense of not only of inferiority, but really almost a sense of not even really being here, a sense of almost like a vapor, that they're not really here. And the self-esteem is essentially non-existent, and so you'll do things to overcompensate for this and start to lead a very prideful life. And if you happen to be good-looking enough and talented enough, or talented enough to become somebody like a movie star, let's say, then your curse is complete. Because if you're a person who has no inner happiness and has no core of happiness inside them, if you are just basically a giant walking black hole of need, and God knows I've met a few of those people, and I've been one for most of my life. If you're one of those people, then the worst thing that can happen to you is to get everything you ever wanted. And the reason that's the worst thing that can ever happen to you is because you can at least survive thinking that, okay, I'm miserable now, but if I made more money, I'd be happy. If I had a nice car, I'd be happy. If I owned this airplane, I'd be happy. If I had a big house, I'd be happy. If I was famous, I'd be happy. All these things would happen. I would be happy if these things were to happen. This is the curse of people who don't have internal happiness. They're always looking for something on the outside. And as long as there is something on the outside to hope for, you can continue to struggle along and sleepwalk your way through your life, assuming that, okay, Maybe I'll eventually get the car that I want, or the house that I want, or the money, the amount of money that I need, or the fame, or whatever. And when I get those things, I'll be happy. And that's how you go through life. And most people never get those things, so that just kind of gets you through. It's just like, it's like methadone, I guess. But when you get to be one of these people like Jennifer Aniston, you've gotten all of it. You're famous, you're rich, you're beautiful. Jennifer Aniston must know that she can have just about any single man in the world, and a significant portion of the married men as well. So she's not hurting for partners. And so why is she constantly alone? And why is she constantly dumped? Who dumps Jennifer Aniston? You want to know who dumps Jennifer Aniston? I would. You would too. Happily married now, but 3 years ago, I'm not saying I would have dumped her in, 3 days or anything. But eventually I would have, and it probably would have taken a month or two. Because there comes a point when you begin to realize that it doesn't matter how beautiful you are, or how sexy you are, how attractive you are, you cannot live with a person like this. And bone canoe, hang in there. We're all on a journey. The fact that you're here means you're going to get there. Don't you worry. You just relax. He says he's describing him or somebody. He's trying. I have to read this comment. I feel like Bill is describing me, or at least the kind of person I'm fighting not to be. Buddy, if you're fighting not to be that person, you're not that person, and you won't become that person. Trust me on this. It's not easy, but you'll get there. The fact that you can ask a question like that, the fact that you have that self-awareness, means it's not going to happen to you. Don't worry. So I have, prior to finding happiness inside myself and then finding the person who actually multiplied that happiness enormously, infinitely, but I did go through a period of 5 or 6 years there when I started to get a little famous and was hanging out with a lot of Hollywood celebrities. And I dated a few movie stars and TV stars. I actually did. I think 4 of them. I would say 4 names that you would recognize, or certainly you could Google and find pictures of. And I don't want to make this about any one of those individuals, but as a general rule, they're very interesting, they're very glamorous, and that means exciting. They're very attractive, and they're very intense. And all of these things are terrifically exciting in the first couple weeks or months. But what you find is, especially in one case I'm more familiar with than others, you find that you will never be happy, because that person will never be happy and can never be happy. And you find that you spend more and more of your time shoveling coal into this furnace of need, and the more coal you shovel, the more coal they expect the next day, and it comes a point when it's like you rapidly get exhausted. You simply say, I can't do this. I can't do it anymore. I can't, not that I can't, I don't want to. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to be, I don't want my whole life to be nothing but argumentation about things that shouldn't even be discussed. I mentioned this on the show a few times before, but when I was a limo driver, this would be when I was around 91, 92, I almost never did celebrities. I took people to and from LAX, businessmen mostly, in Lincoln Town cars, to and from LAX from Pasadena area. But one night, I went and I picked up 2 people from Pasadena Playhouse, where they'd done a reading. And I recognized both of them, and that's because one of them was Meredith Baxter Birney. Most of you recognize as the mom on that show. What show was it? God, I can never remember. Was it the Michael J. Fox show? Hang on. What was she in? Family Ties. that's the one with Michael J. Fox, I think. In any event, Meredith Baxter Birney and the person she was with, I was actually much more interested in, and that was an actor named Dan Hedaya, who's been in a bunch of interesting stuff, including Buckaroo Banzai and I want to say Blood Simple. So anyway, so I was driving them from Pasadena to her home in, well, it must have been Brentwood or someplace like that. It was about a 45-minute drive nighttime. And she got in the car. I didn't say a word. I never said one syllable. I didn't utter a single syllable, but it was a town car. If it had been a stretch, they would have put the divider up, and I wouldn't have blamed them. But, sometimes people, one of the great things about being a limo driver is there are times when people just simply assume that you're part of the upholstery and will speak to each other as if you're not there. And most of the time that makes sense, because most of the time those limo drivers don't go on to become world-famous internet celebrities. I'm not mentioning me or anything. I'm just saying sometimes that can happen. And these stories don't get retold. But in any event, I drove them for 45 minutes. And she got in the car, and she said, I was just terrible. And Dan said, no, you were fantastic. No, I was terrible. I'm start driving. No, it was great. Everybody loved you. I looked so old. No, baby, you look absolutely wonderful. The crowd hated me. No, the crowd loved you. You remember all the applause when you said this line? I just think I've never been I've never been worse in my life. No, I've seen you. It went on and 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 on. It didn't stop. It was 45 minutes of Dan Hedaya shoveling coal into the gaping black hole of need that was Meredith Baxter Birney. Nothing personal, Meredith, by the way. You're just one of thousands of famous people who are built that way. And within 10 or 15 minutes of this, you realize, I think I'd like to date this person less than anybody in the world. I think she came out gay, so it's not going to be really much of a problem, but for me or anyone else. But in any event, this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with people whose insecurity level is so high that it just needs constant reinforcement, not just not just passive reinforcement like, hey, nice job, or you look beautiful. Constant, never-ending, ongoing reinforcement, and no matter how much of it you do, they're never happy. They never get to the point when they go, oh, really? I guess I was good. So that's a special hell, is to be rich, famous, desirable, because you then have everything you thought that you have everything you thought that would make you happy, and you're more miserable than ever. And so they keep raising the stakes. They keep having to up the intensity. It's like any other addiction, The guy who is the character I mentioned. I wanted all these characters in my video messages, like computer graphics guys, to be based on people who are actual people. And the character I named after the executive officer, after the character I'd like to get Alfonso Rachel to play, I named Gary McCullough, because Gary was the guy who was the kind of the center of the story of The Corner, which is a story about a year in the life of drug dealers in the heart of Baltimore. And why did I give him this name? Of all the names I could have chosen, especially Black Americans, why did I choose Gary McCullough? I chose him because he's the most just terribly tragic example of what could be and what wasn't. And Gary McCullough died of a drug overdose because he had done so much heroin and so much cocaine that he built up such a resistance. He went clean for quite a while. When he finally went back out and started using again, he gave himself the kind of dose he used to have, but his cells weren't ready for it anymore, and he just killed him. And this is, so you find in Hollywood that, okay, so it wasn't the car. So now we need maybe it'll be 8 cars, or maybe it'll be, instead of this $600,000 car, maybe what I need to be happy is a $3 million car, or whatever. And then the reason that so many of these Hollywood relationships don't last very long is there's also, well, the reason I'm not happy is because I haven't met the right person. Have you ever noticed how few celebrities date, are married to real people, and that as a percentage of celebrity marriages, those tend to be the most stable ones, the people who are married to non-celebrities? Hugh Jackman seems to be a great example of that. He's got to be the most charming guy in the world, and I don't know how long he's been married. I want to say it's 34 years, something like that. That's because Hugh Jackman is a celebrity who doesn't have a gaping hole of need in the middle of him. Something else drove him there. I don't know how he got there, but I'm glad he did. You can count a number of people who are like that. And strangely enough, and this will do it for me for the night, of the many, many wonders in my life, and they just continue to keep coming. And I ain't done yet, by the way. I actually got a chance to be, I wouldn't say friends with Clint Eastwood, but I certainly had a chance to talk with him on several occasions, and had Clint Eastwood call me over and you know, tell me thought I was doing a really great job, and you know, do I golf and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm showing off, absolutely. I'm very proud of that, and needless to say, Clint is a conservative, and all the rest of it. But the reason I bring up Clint Eastwood is because I went through a stage where I binged watched all of the Twilight Zone episodes. Just not all at one session, but just that's all I watched. I watched 3 or 4 of them, and then the next night I watched another 3 or 4 or whatever. And especially in the first season, there's a lot of these all-American, super clean, 60s, early 60s blonde women, blonde actresses. And 1 or 2 of them, and they're all like Anne Francis, but some of them but most of them you don't. And they were just so striking to me and so attractive in a way that I ended up, after every episode, I'd see one of them, and I'd look them up on IMDb. And many of them had already died. A few of them were still alive. But the one thing that 80% of them had in common was they all dated Clint Eastwood at one point or another. And the reason I bring all this up is because Clint Eastwood strikes me as a guy who has actually done a fair amount of dating in Hollywood, but who does not strike me as a person who has that need to be loved and admired by people. In fact, I know he does not have the need to be loved and admired by people. He's one of the few people in Hollywood who do the work for the sake of the work. And I don't think Clint much cares whether people go to his movies or like his movies. I think he makes his movie because it's something he wants to say. And I don't think it much worries him what people think about him. He's Clint freaking Eastwood. Why should he care what people think? But in any event, yeah, that's that. I think that'll do it. Hey, it's 7 o'clock.